And this is Paul Cooney with the Go Radio Football Show with Global Eco Energy. With me tonight, the Falkirk captain, Stephen McGinn. In at late notice. Thank you, Stephen. Craig Moore failed a late fitness test. He's still out looking for players. Thanks for coming in tonight. Huge night.
Yeah, no problem, Paul. Yeah, like everyone else out there, I was just waiting in the house, waiting for what's a massive night for Rangers, but Scottish football as well. With the coefficient table, it's really important that Rangers can get over the line tonight and go and take that next step in Europe.
Just 10 yards away from you is a football legend, John Hartson. No need to give you the full introduction. John, everyone knows about you and what you've done. And European nights for you were very special. So what about Rangers tonight? 2-1 up in Servette, in Geneva. How do they tackle it tonight?
Well, they go into the game 2-1 in front, so they've got that slight advantage. I think ideally it would have been 2-goal advantage. Really, they would like to. I think they had enough chances last week at Ibrox to make that happen. I think they've got to stay in the game. An early goal for Servette tonight would obviously mean that Rangers will be under the cosh for a while. Servette at home, they'll have a vociferous crowd. And this is where you've got to be strong. You've got to show character, Paul, within the team. Rangers, I think, are a better team than Servette, but tonight they have to go and show it. We know what's at stake. The winners will probably face PSV, who are 4-1 up from their first leg game. So they don't get any easier, but I think financially as well for the club, if they can get through another tie this evening, everybody will benefit at Rangers. So for me, a really hard game. Rangers will need to be at their best to go and win it. I fancy them to do it. I really fancy Rangers to go and do a job tonight in Switzerland. And then hopefully they can go on and place PSV in the next qualifier.
Rangers fans, what are you thinking ahead of tonight? 08, 08, 17, 17, 700. And Celtic fans, well, you're off midweek at the moment, as we know, until the middle of September, when Celtic are in the Champions League proper. Celtic have been linked, well, it's speculation at the moment, Stephen. Any word, what do you think about Ryan Fraser at Newcastle? Out of favour there. Could you see him coming to Celtic?
Yeah, I mean, it's a type of rumour you can see a bit of logic in. Celtic are in the market for another winger. I think he'll help with the European, with the homegrown players. I think they've got a bit of a shortage with that in terms of a few players that have left in the last few years. And no doubt at his best, Ryan Fraser lit up the Premiership at times. I think if Celtic can get him in and Brendan Rodgers can get him going again, and it's a real good move.
John, could you see it happening? Would he fit in, do you think?
I think so, yeah. He's a good player. I think he's been not played regular of late. His game time has become, not as much as what he would have wanted. I'm not too sure if he's in Howe's sort of plans going forward. Newcastle are buying players all the time. I think they're looking at the top end market now. Newcastle, brilliant at the weekend in their first home game. So I think Ryan Fraser is a talent, and coming up to Scotland and joining Celtic, I think would be a very wise move, because he's got a lot to prove as well.
He's not going to command a big transfer fee. That's the word out of St James's Park. Lagerbielke is over for the medical, we understand. So you played with a great Swede at Celtic. Could this be another one on the way? It looks like it, doesn't it? The defender is probably about to sign the contract.
Well, yes, I think if he's a defender, then obviously, Carter Vickers got a knock at the weekend. We don't not much news on his fitness. We've already sold Starfelt, so you don't want to be leaving yourself short, Paul, going into 4 competitions this season, the 3 domestic competitions, and of course the Champions League. So Johnson is out at right back at the minute, and Ralston is covering for him. Left back as well. I think Taylor sometimes needs a little bit of help. I think he can do it coming out to the side now and again. He's played an awful lot of football. A left back I'd be looking at, certainly, if we had the chance to get one. But no, another defender I think would be music to Brendan Rodgers' ears.
Rangers fans are looking forward to the big match tonight. Celtic fans, what are you thinking ahead of, the upcoming month? It's going to be quite a few weeks coming for Celtic and for Rangers. But what's going to happen with Rangers tonight? We'll bring you the team news in the second hour. Here's the update yesterday from Michael Beale, the latest on the players available.
Yeah, no issues. Obviously, we mentioned that Lunny wouldn't be travelling, but Connor's back. Obviously, Ryan's had a nice rest, so he'll be running around tomorrow.
Rangers don't need to win, but the manager, he was asked about that.
I just think we're really focused. I think we did a good job last week to get ourselves in front, but this game for us starts 0-0, and it's important we try to win again, because if we do that, then we know we're definitely through. We know it's hugely important to the club, the fans, and us as players and staff as well. So it's just important we attack the game head on.
And what's the team for tonight? Well, this time last night, Barry Ferguson was with us with Mark Guidi, and Barry spoke about the game tonight, and he gets to his team.
Listen, it was one of these ones. But wait, listen to Michael Beale, and I think sometimes in these games you've got to make the opposition think, but also you've got to make sure you're solid when you go away from home. Mark made a good point earlier on the show that got to remember Rangers are leading. They'll come at you, so you need to make sure you're solid and compact, and hopefully hit them on the counter attack. And so I've went with a back three. Obviously Butland in goals. I went Suter, Golston and Balogun. My two wing backs is Tavernier and Barisic. A solid midfield three of Jack, Raskin and Cifuentes. We can't well just in front of them with Danilo through the middle.
That was Barry last night, and not controversial, but saying three at the back. The manager changed things at the weekend, as you know, Stephen. What do you make of that lineup tonight? Could you see him going?
I can see the logic in it, but I can't see any way Michael Beale changes the defensive formation in such a huge night for him and for the club. I think we'll go back to these tried and trusted four at the back.
You're arguing with Barry Ferguson. That's what you're saying. You're taking him on.
I don't think that will be the case tonight. I think it'll be the usual back four. The one thing when I'm trying to pick my Rangers team here is the lack of pace. It's something Rangers have had for the last few seasons. Even going back to European run, guys like Bassey and Aribo could carry the ball, could travel with it. So they are lacking a bit in pace. I've actually picked a team that's just solid. I've picked a team with a clean sheet in mind, actually.
And that would do.
And it gets the job done.
What's your team?
So I've gone for Butland and goals, the usual back four of Tavernier, Goldson, Suter and Barisic.
Okay, the one you would expect.
I've gone with the same midfield three as Barry, with Cifuentes and Jack in beside Raskin. And then a front three with Lammers and Cantwell supporting Danilo. I think he looks a lot more comfortable through the middle as opposed to the left wing slot. So as I said, I don't think there's loads of pace to choose from. I know Matondo had a bit of a cameo and his Rangers career might get going again for the lack of options of pace, but I think that's a team that can be solid and can control the game.
John, what do you feel?
Well, Barry knows Rangers a lot more than me, watches them a lot more than me, and analyses their performance and their formation and everything else. And I respect Barry's decision, but I can't see Goldson coming back in tonight, having missed out at the weekend, straight back in the team, a little bit rusty. I think it'll be the same team. I think two of his front three scored at the weekend, Lammers and Danilo. Coming off a really good performance. I think it'll be, as we see, I think it'll be Cifuentes, Raskin and Cantwell along the three in the middle of the park, and then Dezers, Lammers and Danilo. Normal back four, Tavernier, Suter, Balogun and Barisic, obviously with Butland. So I think he'll say to the players, a wonderful performance. You know, they really picked up from the week before, losing the opener against Kilmarnock. And then a really good result against Servette, where ideally they could love to have scored more goals, but it wasn't quite to be. They still go with the lead. So I think that team is really solid and has gone and proven that they can go win the next two games. Having been lost at Kilmarnock, as I said, they won the next two. So I don't think any reason to change it tonight.
Rangers in action, 7:30. We'll bring you the team news in the next hour. Rangers fans, what are you feeling ahead of the game? Give us a call. 0808 17 17 700. Paul Cooney with the team here, the Go Radio Football Show. It is Stephen McGinn. And for Craig Moore, Oz is out looking for a player. We'll bring you any news if it's something major. John Hartson as well. Gary is on the line from the Gorbals. Gary, I think you'll be talking Celtic and maybe Newcastle. Good evening.
Evening, Paul. Evening, lads.
Hi, Gary.
I get it.
So
yeah, obviously it's great that I get to throw Newcastle into the mix on primarily what is a kind of Scottish football
exactly.
chat show.
Well, and the reason I say it tonight is because we mentioned it last night. We've got the Arsenal legend here, John Hartson, and the name of Kieran Tierney. It looks as though his time is up there. Newcastle are interested in him. Would you like to see him go to Newcastle or Celtic? Gary, what do you think?
I'd prefer to see him go to Newcastle purely based on the fact I'd love to see him back at Celtic, obviously, because we know he's Celtic through and through, and he is a quality defender. But I think, to be honest, looking at his career going forward, I think if he comes back up the road, I think it's I'm not saying it's admitting failure, but it's kind of like you're taking a step back I think, and rather than try and fight for a place down here, we've seen what happened with Billy Gilmore as well. There was a chance possibly for him to go back to Ibrox. I think he made the right move in going to Brighton. It didn't really work out at the start, but now he's getting more game time.
John, are you surprised that it looks to be all over for Kieran Tierney? Great favourite with the fans down there.
Am I surprised? Probably after what's he been there now a couple of years. He's not held down a regular place. We all thought he was going to go down there and totally rip the Premier League up. We know of his talents, but obviously Zinchenko, the Ukraine left back, came from Manchester City, a serial winner, won titles, won everything else. A wonderful player. He can play left back. He drifts into midfield. He's an outstanding player, Zinchenko. So he's up. I know Kieran can play in a number of positions. He can go centre half. But with Saliba there and Gabriel, they've got some brilliant centre backs now as well, Arsenal. So I'm not surprised that he is like on the radar of several clubs. In particular, a club like that are really going forward in the world in terms of Newcastle. But am I surprised? Not really, because it hasn't really happened for him like I would have expected it to. But he's too good a player not to be playing every week. He was totally out of the fray at the weekend, wasn't even sub. Arsenal went on and beat Nottingham Forest 2-1. And when you're not involved, I don't know whether he was injured or if he had a knock and that was the reason he was out. But it seems to me that maybe that relationship with the manager is not quite there as you would like it to be.
Gary, what's your question tonight about Celtic?
Yeah, so basically, obviously, just the link with Ryan Fraser possibly coming in. You know, he's still a fairly young age, I would say, 28. You know, with Kieran Tierney being 26. I think it's kind of mixed emotions because, on the one hand, I think he's the kind of player that Brendan Rodgers could probably transform and turn his career slightly around. I know, obviously, you guys were talking about possibly, you know, getting back into Scotland setup kind of thing. What would worry me is the fact that obviously Newcastle were so desperate to kind of get him off the books, obviously to do the FFP. We're trying to get players in the door that's going to contribute to the team. He's already had a reported falling out with Eddie Howe. It was the same kind of fallout I think he had with Stevie Clark when Eddie Howe, funnily enough, came in the door. You know, when you look at his injury worries, you know, he's got a lot of hamstring and groin problems, and just in terms of like, although he wouldn't be looking for Newcastle wouldn't be looking for a massive fee, I think he would have to take a massive cut in terms of he's reportedly on 63 grand a week at Newcastle, so you would be looking to get him down to about the 30,000 mark.
So Gary, if it was you, you'd say no. You don't.
No, I
don't.
just think
Okay.
there's a wee element of troublemaking
Got
about
it.
it.
Yeah. Stephen, what do you think?
I think what Gary's just said, I think both parties will assess everything. I think Celtic will look at what's happened at Newcastle, why it went so badly for him, what is his injury record, because the last thing you want to do as a club is you bring in a player and he has got a problem. So, and for Ryan Fraser's point of view, his next move needs to be right, because Newcastle just hasn't worked. Bournemouth was great, his career was looking great, he was involved in the national team, but there is a potential tournament he can play in next year for Scotland. So this move for Ryan Fraser, he needs to assess, is this the right one for him as well?
It's a totally different scenario, Ryan Fraser's move and Kieran Tierney's move, because Arsenal would want a fee for Kieran Tierney. They could probably sell him for the best part of 30 million, 35 million. He's still a good age, and he demands massive wages. I think in terms of Ryan Fraser, Newcastle, they almost want to give him away, get him off the wage bill so they can move on and look to invest it in another player. It's just whether or not Celtic want to take on Ryan Fraser. I don't know what he'll be on, and you just mentioned their 30 grand a week. That is almost going up with the top earners and not kick the ball for Celtic.
It is, isn't it, in Scotland? And he's on 60 in Newcastle. Stephen, is there an issue around Celtic having enough Scottish players for the pool for Champions League?
I think it will always be something that they need to look at. I think when you think of maybe Stephen Welsh, I know he came on at the weekend, but with signing Lagerbielke on top of Navroki, you've got Vickers already there, you would think he's one that might move on. So it's constantly something they've got to be looking at in terms of the quota. Just lastly, going back to Ryan Fraser with the troublemaking, I don't think if he was that much a problem, Eddie Howe signs him after working with him at Bournemouth. So I think he'll have worked him before. Maybe it led to some sort of fallout because Eddie Howe's maybe said, "I'll get you going again," and it hasn't happened. It can happen. It just doesn't happen for whatever reason. But I don't think you sign a player again if he's got any sort of issue with him.
Tini would have to be a loan deal. Get him up here on loan. But obviously Ryan Fraser, he's been a very good player. We've not seen a lot of him in recent years. I thought he lit the Premier League up at times when he was at Bournemouth. A player that Eddie Howe would have known from his Bournemouth days. And it's interesting how he's not really done it for him at Newcastle.
What about Celtic themselves? This is, it was a big game on Sunday, biggest game of the weekend. Aberdeen, difficult place to go to. 3-1 Celtic. Here's Brendan Rodgers.
It was a very good win for us. Obviously, Barry is the team very well set up. It's always difficult to play against that sort of man-to-man and quite direct style. But we got through the game really well. Scored some really good goals. Disappointed with the goal that we gave away from a static goal kick. Second half we settled a little bit better, but a tough place to come, and I think Barry's shown that in the period he's been playing. That man-to-man marking is a challenge, and always is, and obviously the directness into our defensive line early. So, but the boys stood up to it, and it's a really good win for us.
Hatate coming on made a difference, John.
Yeah, well, he likes to get on the ball, doesn't he? He likes to go forward with the ball. He's very positive when he even plays. When he comes on, he almost played with a little point to prove that, don't leave me out again type of thing. But unfortunately,
maybe he does have a point to prove.
Well, of course, because he does. Nobody wants to be left out, in particular when he was one of the Celtics' best players. I don't think it's a case of Brendan Rodgers doesn't fancy him. I think Brendan will appreciate Hatate's ability and what he can do on the pitch, and of course he'd have looked at the success that he had last season with Hatate playing the majority of the games. It's just started the season with Turnbull. Turnbull impressed, sort of caught his eye in pre-season, and he went with Turnbull, and naturally the supporters and I are going to be talking about that big decision. But Hatate was excellent. I thought it was a really, really good win. VAR showed that it's working this season properly with Abada's goal to start off, and then obviously a great finish from Kyogo. First time, sharp as a needle, it came to him, let him run across his body. And then I thought Matt O'Reilly's was a nice little finish as well, which probably, that was the nail in the coffin for Aberdeen. It made it 3-1, and there was almost no way back then.
Matt O'Reilly's back on it, isn't he? In the goals already. It took him till February, I think, to get a goal in the old season. Gary, before you go, final thought?
Yeah, obviously, just in terms of talking about the Aberdeen game on Sunday, I thought it was a really, really good advert for Scottish football. Obviously we're all talking about how Aberdeen could do this year. Whether Europe will hinder them, I'm not too sure. Obviously, whether they qualify, obviously as well. But in terms of just I thought, when you look at players like Abada, I think Abada's going to have that Elyounoussi effect. That when we had Elyounoussi under Brendan Rodgers the first time, I think he'll be that type of player. I think he'll flourish. I think also O'Reilly as well. I think he's bought into the manager's style of play as well. We've not found our feet yet under Brendan yet, but you've seen Sunday, we things are starting to click together, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks it will all start to fall into place, and we'll stop conceding goals, kind of thing.
Stephen McGinn is nodding there. Stephen?
No, I just agree. I think it was a brilliant win. I don't see Celtic Rangers taking 12 points out of Pittodrie this season.
No.
And I know a lot of the chats came about Celtic and a bit of a patched up team and injuries and stuff like that, but it was a good time to get Aberdeen. I think Barry Robson's still not got his team, and he's lost Ramadani last week. I think Liam Scales will join in the next week or two.
Is that on the cards?
I expect that to happen. I think they'll look to try and get Matty Pollock back up the road from Watford. Angus McDonald's still injured. They've just signed the left wing back McGarry from Australia, so having to play Ryan Duncan there he's an attacking winger, having to play him in a kind of left wing back position against Celtic wasn't ideal for Aberdeen at the weekend. So I think it was a good time for Celtic to get Aberdeen also. And as I said, I always think the best teams are a reflection of the manager. That was like a team of Barry Robson's in Sunday. They were so aggressive, so in your face. The tempo of the game was good. I think Aberdeen are going to take points off Celtic Rangers this season.
And we'll see if it's in the image of the new Celtic manager, Brendan Rodgers. Speak about that shortly, and more about Rangers as well. There's more from Michael Beale over in Geneva. Rangers, 2 hours away from kick-off? Tuesday night, the Go Radio Football Show. Paul Cooney, John Hartson and Stephen McGinn. This time tomorrow night, it'll be Barry Ferguson with Peter Grant. And will they be talking about a Rangers overall victory? A draw would do tonight. Rangers go in 2-1 up after the game last week. As John said, 2-0 would have been brilliant. But, the away goals don't count double. So that's a good thing from a Rangers point of view. Here's the manager, Michael Beale. He's speaking about just holding on. That's not going to be enough.
Come to win, and if we perform to our level, that gives us a good chance too. We want to be positive on the front foot wherever we go, and so there won't be too much of a change in our normal sort of setup. One thing's for sure is we're not coming here to hold on to what we've got.
And he's been speaking about the great European nights that Rangers have had in recent years. We know they've helped the coefficient big time.
I think all the favourite ones for Rangers probably come in the season that I wasn't here, to be honest with you. But no, listen, we have done really well away from home in Europe. I remember Porto away was a special night because Luis Diaz scored a fantastic goal early in the game, but it's a game that we dominated and the team grew a lot from that. We had Benfica away as well. Feyenoord was another night. You think all the way back to Ufa in 2018 when we qualified, and so we've had a lot of big nights in Europe away from home. This group of players have got a lot of experience, but from that every game away in Europe's tough. I remember going to Progress Niederkorn, and it's difficult. The weather, the pitch, the officials, the new environment. It's a great leveler, and we'll have to be at our best.
John, overall, you expect Rangers to go through?
I think they're capable if they perform like Michael Beale is expecting them to tonight. All Michael Beale can do is prepare the team, give his team talk, tell them how many great results they've had over the years in Europe, and they have had some terrific results. This is a brand new team, a lot of changes, not a load of new signings, and they are capable of going to Servette tonight and coming away with a victory. There's no doubt about that. They created enough opportunities in the home game. My only worry is that they start a little bit sloppy. Yeah. They're under the cosh because Servette will come flying out of the traps. Rangers will be a little bit conservative early on. They'll try and find their way, get some passes in. They'll always have the threat with Danilo and one or two others that play through the middle for them. But that's my only issue. If Servette score the first goal, then the crowd get up. The Servette players take confidence from that, and it becomes a really, really difficult night. It's important that Rangers start the game properly. And as I said, it's going to be down to the players. Michael Beale. Where did he come from? Yeah. Michael Beale. Yep. All he can do is give the lads confidence. Yep. He can pick the right team, what he thinks will go and win a football match tonight in a tough environment. And then it's going to be down to the players, Paul. Ultimately, you hand the job over to the players, and it's down to them to perform and be strong tonight, mentally as well as very good on the pitch.
Stephen, it's early days. He's one of the late signings, Jose Cifuentes. Some great reports on him. Have you seen much so far? And a big night for him.
Yeah, he looked excellent in the highlights on Saturday. Good reviews. It's always a good sign when your old club's disappointed to see you leave. He looked on paper like he was going to be a good signing, and he started pretty well at Rangers. Already you're picking the Rangers team and you can't see a way where he's not in the team, which is a good sign right away. He looks very athletic, very strong, and adds to what they've got in midfield. I think Raskin, it should make him a bit better. I think he is a playmaker. He's a ball player. I think at times, especially in the first leg, he has to be the defensive minded player. I don't think it suits him as much, so I think sticking Cifuentes in next to him should help him. I just think it's such a tricky game. There's no doubt if Rangers get through, PSV quality wise the challenge is 10 times harder, but Servette were very well organised. They were very fit. As John said, it's going to be a testing atmosphere at times tonight, and it's about Rangers playing with their head. These Rangers players have been taught very early in their Rangers career about every game being must win, but tonight's not must win. This is a must not lose.
I'll tell you don't want them going down to 10 men, because they did so well in the last week, down to 10 men for what a good part of the second half, and in the round beforehand they went almost the whole game. They do seem really dogged, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that you don't come through that tie against Genk when you go down to 10 men after 5 minutes. You don't come through that tie without being strong-minded, really well organised. So it's going to be a testing night for Rangers tonight. I think they could have made it easier a bit with a bit more intensity in the last 20-25 minutes last week at Ibrox. But I think if they're solid, they can come through with a big mental hurdle tonight if they can come through it.
Manager Michael Beale's been speaking. This was at the weekend about someone who came back in. It was his debut second time round. Leon Balogun.
Leon was fantastic today, and he gives that first hit. He can play right or left. I think we should get used to seeing a back three at times as well. And Ben's back into training on Monday. That's the first sighting of Dujon. Ridvan's back in training Thursday. All of a sudden, Leon King's back. There's a little bit more strength there. What I'm really keen to do is have some consistency in the starting 11 and use the subs if needed, not make too many changes while we're in this period. I think it will help the team. So Leon played today for Connor and did really well, but expect Connor back on Tuesday.
Connor back on Tuesday is what he's saying, so that looks as though he will be in. But John, you feel, well, look, we'll find out in the next hour.
Yeah, it's a big game to put him back in. Listen, he's his captain. He's capable of going in, no doubt about it.
And he's so consistent, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and he brings a lot to Rangers, both as a figurehead, captain, as a defender as well. But Balogun was a strange one for me when they eventually let Balogun go. First time around, they brought him back to the club. Physically, he's very big, strong, goes and heads the ball, really good, centre back. And Michael Beale there is not contradicting himself as such, but he said there in one breath, he said, I don't want to be making too many changes. I'd like to pick the same players, be consistent. And if that's the case, then he picks the same team because it's a really comfortable 4-0 win. But then again, he's talking about now playing 3 at the back or maybe replacing Suter or Balogun with Goldson and staying to 4. Barry thinks it's going to be 3 at the back with the wing backs. Barisic and Tavernier were both very capable. So in one sense, you can't quite get what he's going to say, but or what he's going to do, if you like. But he's got options. I think the other quality, the other good point is that he's got options. He's got options to change. He's got options in midfield. He's got Ryan Jack. He's got one or two others. Lundstrom. So
Lundstrom, I think he is out tonight.
All right.
Yeah. Rangers fans, what are you thinking? 08, 08, 17, 17, 700. 50,000 were there at the weekend, and I think by and large they enjoyed it. It was 1-0 though until 8 minutes to go. And of course, Connor Goldson, he behaves like a captain. He's the vice captain to James Tavernier, but you always think he's a real leader on the pitch, as you're the Falkirk captain.
Yeah, a leader. I expect him to play tonight. I didn't expect him coming into the season. I didn't expect to see him at Kilmarnock. I thought he'd be out for a bit longer than he was.
It was too early.
No, I mean, the result depending, it wasn't Connor Goldson's fault, but I didn't expect him. But I think it shows the importance of him to Michael Beale. He really trusts him. He looks to him on and off the pitch. I wasn't surprised to see him not play against Livingston. I expect him to play tonight, but I don't expect him to then go on and play against Morton on Saturday in the Cup. I would expect Balogun to come in. I think they need to manage Connor Goldson's load, and I just think Michael Beale needs as many players out there as he trusts tonight, and I don't think he trusts anyone more than Connor Goldson.
Do you think he'll go to a 3? Goldson will fit in between Suter and Balogun, or will he take one of them out and play a 4?
No, I don't. I think he's very consistent in his formation, Michael Beale. So I can't. At times, maybe in the league, maybe he'll introduce it as something going forward if Leon Balogun puts himself in a position where he has to play, but I can't see, other than that, Michael Beale making a big change to the formation.
We're going to run through all the teams from the weekend. It's still just a couple of days ago. The Celtic game was on Sunday. Rangers were playing Saturday, 4-0 against Livy. Ross County, what a win for them against St Johnstone, and already alarm bells ringing if you're in Perth. And St Mirren, a win for your old team, Stephen, 2-1 against Dundee. And then on Sunday, Celtic winning the early game 3-1 at Pittodrie. Hearts and Killie 0-0. I think Killie would probably be happy about that. Lawrence Shankland, apparently wanted in England. That's no surprise, but Saudi Arabia as well. Could he be another one taking the petrodollars from the Middle East? And Motherwell 2-1 against Hibs. And Hibs, who would have believed it, bottom of the table. And yet, still then, they'll be playing on Thursday night, as Hearts will as well, against Rosenborg. And for Hibs, it's against Lucerne. And they're in, 3-1 up from the first leg. So, but that's another of your old teams. It's hard to figure.
Yeah,
Hibs.
I mean, I do think they have struggled with the intensity of the Thursday nights coming into the Sunday. They need to be very careful though, because on paper the fixtures haven't been a disaster. I mean, you get into the season, you get St Mirren at home, Motherwell away, you come out pointless. All of a sudden you come into a fixture list with Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, and you don't want them to be your must wins. So they need to be very careful with the league form. But I think the fact that they can park that now and they go to Switzerland on Thursday with a massive carrot of the Aston Villa game, if they can get through that on Thursday, which would be a huge game for both clubs. So they can park the league side for now, go and get the job done on Thursday, but they very quickly need to get the league for, performances going.
They sure do. Did you notice I didn't say much about Newcastle earlier on, because we didn't see that coming, did we? The result against your brother's team.
Yeah, definitely
Aston
didn't.
Villa.
And I only managed to see first 15-20 minutes of it, and
And then you were behind the couch.
I couldn't have told you it was 5-1 for a start, how robust Aston Villa have been. And
sure.
You know what though, Stephen, Paul, I think Newcastle can do that to a lot of teams this season. Usyk, what a player. Isak, is that Isak? Usyk.
And of course, the Champions League. I mean, he has done some job, hasn't he? You know.
Oh, he has. He
Eddie
has.
Howe.
He took him into the Champions League. Probably a lot of people still
Yep.
thought maybe it's a little bit early, but he's had money to spend. He's brought some good additions in there. And it was a brilliant result against Villa. And Villa, a lot of people's fancies this season to push on from last season
And
under
still do.
Unai Emery, of course. Yeah.
That's the fixture I want. If Celtic and hopefully Rangers can get in there for one of our clubs to play Newcastle in the Champions League, I think the atmospheres would just be outstanding.
Have they ever
We-
played?
we,
really?
we used to beat in the teams from down there anyway.
Well,
Celtic.
John, what did you have to do with that game? I'll never forget that. Liverpool, of course, 20 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
it
we
was,
we had a good side, Paul. We
For sure,
Although you go to Anfield, and the Anfield are brilliant under the lights in Europe. Look how many Champions League medals they've got. Going back to the old days of Keegan, Toshak, Rush, Dalglish, you know, they never ever. They always turned it on at Anfield. You know, they were always very confident. The crowd behind them swaying there. So not many teams win at Anfield, but that particular night we needed to score. It was 1-1 from the first game. We managed to do that,
Yep.
and we were clapped off that night. So
You scored from about 80 yards.
well,
I'm just making it big every time I ask
goes
you.
more, yeah. But
indeed,
no. It was a result for the team. It was a brilliant team. Took us through to the semi-final, and who'd have thought it? Then we went on to, I think, Blackburn before that. So
Yeah. Ewood Park, of course.
What
Graham
Stephen
Souness.
is saying, you know, you got to be confident, because down south, as you know, our league is very frowned upon in terms of not having the quality.
Are they unfair on us, would you say? On the
I would
Scottish
say
Premier?
so, yeah. But they keep nicking our best players. So what can you do about that?
For
you
not
know?
enough money.
But it would be great if Hibs could get through, and then obviously Aston Villa.
Exactly,
What a
the John
tie.
McGinn derby, they're calling it.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, I'm sure Stephen is still struggling asking his brother for a ticket. And the
Stephen, how many have
family,
we
but-
got? No, they'll wait to see what happens. But Hibs could go through. Maybe talk about that later in the programme. But this is Glasgow's own Go Radio, the Go Radio football show. Paul Cooney with Stephen McGinn and John Hartson. Quick break and then we're back. Lots coming up. We'll hear more from Michael Beale ahead of the game tonight, and more from Brendan Rodgers, and maybe from you. 0808 17 17 700, or you can join the conversation at Go Football Show. Lots of calls coming in. 0808 17 17 700. John Hartson, Paul Cooney and Stephen McGinn. Rangers in action tonight. It's early, it's a qualifier, but they're 90 minutes away from getting through to the fourth and the final round before the Champions League proper. The music that everyone loves, John. You remember it well?
the Champions League theme, brilliant.
Celtic will hear that in the middle of September.
Yeah.
And, you know, in a couple of weeks' time, we'll get the draw, and Celtic fans will be desperate to see who it's going to be. Stephen McGinn has said already later on, could it be Newcastle against Celtic in the Champions League? It could be. I don't think they've ever met, have they? And I know someone will come on and say, but not in any major tournament. I can't remember.
Not that I know of.
No, don't think so. Of course, Newcastle have been out of it for so long, but they're back in it. And for Rangers then, huge tonight. 4.3 million to get through to the match, probably against PSV. I don't think there's going to be an upset, is there? They're well ahead after the game last week.
Yeah, I think they'll finish the job. I think they'll win again tonight. Obviously 4-1 up from and I watched some of that game, and they were very impressive. They look like they're in a better place than they were last year. So hopefully, if Rangers get through, it'll be a really challenging, close game again. But tonight's just major for Rangers. I think the consequence of both games, losing this game or losing the PSV game, would be dropping into the Europa League. So there is that safety net for them. But I think financially it'd be huge if they could join Celtic in the Champions League.
Big night for Jack Butland. let's hear from the manager speaking about the goalkeeper he signed in the summer.
Yeah, I've got no doubts with Jack's a top goalkeeper. We get him at a good age. We're very fortunate here. I think we have good goalkeepers in general. It's a position that we've got strength in, depth in, and Jack talks well in the dressing room as well. And I think he started his Rangers career well. And I think in midweek he had a good night, and a VAR decision robs him of a clean sheet. So I was delighted that he got one today.
Ironically, of course, Man United reported to be interested in young McCrory, that he could be going to Man United. Now, he needs to play football, but is it different? It's Man United in for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good link, but we spoke on the show last year. I mean, he had a great end to the season playing for Rangers, did very well in the Celtic game. He needs to play as good as he moves. That would be, you really want him to be playing, especially for the national team, as we spoke about. We don't have enough goalkeepers coming through, so in an ideal world, he goes to Man United and play. That'd be the best case for everyone.
If he played, yeah.
plays.
Yeah. John, for Celtic, can we talk Celtic? Quite a few people asking, what do you think of Celtic so far? I mean, top of the table, along with St Mirren after the first 2 games. It's only 2 games. Let's see what Brendan Rodgers was saying about the match at the weekend, and then we'll hear what you think.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt on that. I think the attitude of the players is top class, and it's always a good sign for a team when you can start well and finish strong. So it was always in the balance, of course, but once we get the 3rd goal, we can then control the game. The guys coming into the game, the subs, really come in and settled the game well for us and made a really, really important contribution.
John, what do you feel?
Yeah, well, they've scored, 7 goals in the first 2 games. People still having a bit of a moan up, but Brendan says the attitude's great. That's all you can do is listen to the manager. Obviously, he's there every day watching the players' attitudes and how they're training and everything else. And he's experienced enough to judge it how he sees it when he makes the big calls. He's with them. He's with them all the time. He's seeing how they are physically, mentally. So yeah, I think it's been a good start, but they will get better. I think once they get into the flow, I think finding that little bit more fluency. Once you get the consistency as well of a starting 11, I think Celtic will kick on. I really do. There's been a few teething problems early on, The 2 goals conceded against Ross County is not like Celtic in the first home game of the season. But I think these are things that Brendan can tinker with. It's good as a team if you've got things to work on. You're not exactly going to be perfect in the first 2 games. There will be problems. There will be injuries like we've seen. Young Welsh has just got a shot in the arm from the manager. He's saying that he wants him to stay at Celtic.
Do you want him to stay, John? Do you expect him to stay?
I think he will now, yeah. The manager's give him a huge lift. He came in at the weekend and did very well. Defended. I thought what Celtic did very well at the weekend was they defended the lead well. When they went to 3-1, they had to head the ball out of their own box because Aberdeen put the ball in the box. And Celtic defended their goal really well and obviously went on to win 3-1. But yeah, there'll be food for thought. There'll be 1 or 2 things that Brendan will want to get better, naturally. But I think over the piece, it's been, 2 wins, 2 good wins, 7 goals, and there will always be little things to work on, Paul. That's just natural.
Of course. That's what the manager said. He said there's a lot to work on.
Yeah. Oh, there's lots to work on. But I think it's the beauty of the squad. They're a group of players that want to learn, want to be better. There's many areas that we can improve on, and that's the beauty of it. It's still very early on in the season, and there's a long way to go. And I think each day they will get better and better. So, but whilst you're looking to improve performance level, it's important to win, and it's 2 out of 2. We've scored goals, and I'm pleased.
Stephen, what have you spotted in the defence? It's slightly different the way they play with the fullbacks, and is that affecting Greg Taylor in the first couple of games?
Yeah, I mean, Greg Taylor had an amazing 18 months to 2 years under Ange Postecoglou, and he took to that new role like a glove. But it's hard that he's back to a more traditional left back where you may be supporting the left winger from behind or overlapping. So, and it's pretty unforgiving at Celtic. You expect him to change his role and keep up the 7, 8 out of 10 performances. So, no doubt that the start of the season's not been as free flowing as Brendan would have liked. I know it's taken over for Ange Postecoglou, changing the style, little touches to it. Injuries have not helped. I mean, who'd have thought finishing the game at Pittodrie would have been Ralston, Welsh, Navrocki and Taylor as a back 4. So, But there's some real positives. I think Navrocki could be a really good player. I mean, he looked like a Celtic player in that game in Sunday.
What did you like about him?
I love the way he steps into the game. I love he almost has that Christopher Ayer way of just going in and picking passes. He looks like he can head. That was a couple of times. It's a free header, but he heads it down to Celtic players. I think he looks like someone at 22 who could be a real good Celtic player. I really like to look at Odin Holm when he came on. I was actually that impressed. I was thinking he's going to be really hard to keep him out to 11. The way he took to the game in Saturday, in Sunday, especially the injury to Rio Hatate. I don't particularly think that the midfield three of McGregor, O'Reilly and Turnbull is as dynamic as it is with Hatate. So I do think with Hatate injury it might open up a wee chance for Odin Holm. And obviously Yang does amazing for the goal.
Got the assist. Yeah.
Looks like he can go either way. So I mean, a lot of these Celtic players we didn't know anything about. You're waiting to judge them, and a couple of them can be quite happy with their Celtic starts.
And I guess the new manager wants to put his stamp on it. I mean, it's a hugely successful team from last season. Few changes, 3 of them have gone, but you do want to see some changes, don't you? At the same time, without losing that grip on the game that they've had.
Well, yeah, there has been, I wouldn't say a hangover, but you look how successful Ange was. You look how successful his team played and the fluency, and there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of players coming in, and Turnbull, who sort of Ange almost, I wouldn't say gave up on, but Hatate was brilliant last season. Turnbull really didn't get a look in the second half of the season. All of a sudden, this season they go in. Turnbull's a completely different player to Hatate. Turnbull likes to get into the box. Hatate will arrive in the box, but he'll also do the donkey work, get back behind the ball when you're defending a lot better. So there's been changes. Alistair Johnson finished the season brilliantly under Ange. All of a sudden, Ralston's have to come back in. Stephen Welsh is having another look in. So there's been lots of change. But I totally agree with young McGinn here. I agree that Yang did very well. Looks a good player. Or it was only little bits and bobs. We saw fits and starts. And Holm looks a real player. He's come in as a sub. Not easy to come on as a sub and make an impression, but he's done that. So I think in recent weeks to come, I think you're going to see Brendan making changes, and sometimes that might go against the team. It might upset the flow, and Celtic might lose the odd game. But it's important that we stick with the manager. I think there is a process. Stilian Petrov kept mentioning process at the weekend. There is a process under Brendan. He's a very vast, experienced manager. So you might see one or two surprises, if you like, coming into the team, because these players deserve a start, the likes of Holm and Yang, definitely.
Pat's on at the socials asking, when is AJ going to be back? Alistair Johnson, any insight? When do you reckon the word is quite soon?
Well, it looks that he's very close to full training. I think with the nature of the game on Sunday, with being on the AstroTurf down at Kilmarnock, I'd be really surprised if he was thrown in. I think Anthony Ralston will play Sunday, but I think they'll look to the St Johnstone game at home to get Alistair Johnson a game in before the massive game at Ibrox. He's such a key player for Celtic.
Let's hear from Brendan Rodgers speaking about the man who came on but then had to go off, Rio Hatate.
Rio coming in was just a tactical one, I felt, in the second balls. There was a lot of direct balls in the first half when in midfield we weren't getting around the second ball. So he's quite tenacious in there, Rio. So bringing him into the game, but then he felt maybe a little issue in his calf. So we'll see how that is in the next couple of days.
What about Kyogo, player of the year last year? And we see a difference in his style under Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, it's one of the most glaring changes. At times last year, I mean, you're thinking some of the games at Hampden, I think he scored against Rangers with like his third touch in the game after about 40 minutes. And then on Sunday, at one point, Anthony Ralston's taking a throw in his own half, and Kyogo's next to Callum McGregor looking for the ball. And I said, you look at Kyogo in these last 2 seasons, could you see an improvement in Kyogo? It'd be very hard to improve in Kyogo. But he actually looks as if he's even enjoying it even more. The more touches he's taking part in the game a lot more, and it's not harming his goal scoring. So that's one of the noticeable changes from Brendan's style.
John, you know a thing or two about Celtic striker being a great Celtic striker. What do you make of Kyogo and the slight changes in the way he's playing this season?
Yeah, there's slight changes. He seems to be coming off a little bit more from that sort of the highest point of the pitch where your centre forward normally is as somebody to hit when you need him. out ball, if you like. But listen, I don't need to mention, wax lyrical more so over Kyogo. Somebody had the audacity to ask me last week who's going to be the top goal scorer this year. The audacity of it. Yeah. But if they keep making him chances and defenders slip up at all and without concentrating, giving bad sort of goal like he did at Aberdeen, it was just a little thing that the two defenders made a slight mistake. Kyogo's on there, so sharp, bang, what a finish! That volley technique. He's got everything really. The big thing for me is keeping him fit, keep making him opportunities, because he's so important to Celtic's success and them goals. I've always said it, Paul. Centre forwards, goal scorers. The top ones are few and far between, and the ones that can go and get you 25, 30 goals will bring you the most success.
Stephen, I asked John what he thought of Celtic after 2 games. What do you feel then? With Brendan Rodgers back, we've touched on some of the changes. What else have you noticed, and what do you think about them?
Well, I think, you look at, they're in a 2-team league and they're already 3 points clear after 2 games. I think they'll take care of St Johnstone in the next league game, and then you can go to Ibrox with a chance to potentially go 6 points clear. So in terms of results wise, they'll be happy that they're in a good place. They'll know they're going to get better. They'll know guys like Alistair Johnson coming back fit improves the team. What I do is it just feels a bit like they are 1 or 2 players still missing, starters. It does have that bit of feel to it, and I think if they can get that sorted as soon as possible, I think the whole thing, just settling down, getting close to your best 11 on the park, I think the whole thing will look even better.
Brendan Rodgers has been speaking about the momentum that he's looking for and the fact that they don't have qualifiers, which is a huge factor.
Yeah, that's the aim, is to obviously you don't play Champions League till mid-September, so the idea is to develop the game model in terms of performance level, because that's always vital for us, because if we perform well we've a much better chance of winning. Players adapting to our work. Probably in the first half we went too direct too many times. Whenever we can play with more of a pause in the game and push them back, but that's just getting used to how we want to work, having that variety in the game, so we have depth we can go to, because we've got great speed, but also making those short, quick passes, which is important for us. So, but yeah, whilst we have plenty of time to work in the week, we can use that time wisely and just keep improving, which is the aim.
John, you're nodding there. There are going to be more signings, aren't there?
Yeah,
in the next 2.5 weeks.
I would think so. I think Celtic have the finance. I think Brendan would have been given some assurances to bring in more players to add to the very good group that he already has. You have to deal with injuries, as I said, some suspensions throughout the season, but also the fluency. You've lost Jota. He was a huge cog in the wheel, if you like, the way Celtic played. Whenever Celtic were in trouble, they'd give it to Jota. He'd carry it. He'd carry it up the pitch. He'd get you up the pitch. And then Maeda played predominantly on the right, or Jota went to the right, Maeda, Kyogo through the middle. And, you had that. It was functioning perfectly well. And, and that's what it was like last season. So there was always going to be a few teething problems when Brendan came in. He probably never expected it to be perfect football. But knowing the guy like I do, knowing what he's achieved before, he will make it perfect. Because that's the way he is. He'll have high, very high standards, and anything but perfect is not good enough for him.
The news is next. Then we're back for hour 2, including the Rangers team will be coming shortly.